Hey everyone, welcome back to Dev Parkour. In this video, I want to talk about why hackathons can be so kind of furiously productive, yet you can feel like you're running up against a wall or running through molasses in your typical sprint work. Theoretically, both processes should be agile, but why is one so much more productive or feels so much more productive than the other? And before we get into it, I want to be very specific about what I'm talking about here. So when I talk about a hackathon, I mean a bunch of engineers, potentially other people from different disciplines, uh, getting together, organizing around a project, and knocking out something over the span of maybe a week or some short amount of time. And when I talk about a agile process or a sprint-oriented process, usually we're talking about something along the lines of Scrum or Safe or some sort of maybe scaled agile, not necessarily capital S scaled agile, scale like Safe, but just agile across multiple teams. So here are my reasons why I think hackathons feel so much more successfully and why we struggle to replicate that across sprint work. So first up, hackathons tend to have small, easy to reason about chunks. The whole premise of a hackathon is that you're only going to be spending a week on it. So it really behooves you to pick a project that you think you can accomplish a meaningful amount of work, get to a demo in 4 days, 5 days, whatever. In my career, I've done some that are only had 2 or 3 days worth of work, some that had as many as 4, with the demo on the last day. So you really have to think big, but build small. Think about what is the smallest thing you can build that actually has meaning, and can leverage the skills of everybody on the team. Secondly, because you have that constrained week, that time constraint, you don't have enough time to really spend a bunch of time just spinning your wheels. Everything has to be moving forward, which means that if you're not sure about something, that's okay. Just try something. You have to be moving forward. You can't spend a whole lot of time doing a bunch of research. You just have to write some code. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's fine too. And if you've thought about things a little bit, you can plan, if something doesn't work out, that's okay. We just don't demo that piece. Next up, in my experience, you have no, or at least very few, meetings during a hackathon. It's focused work. It's all focused on getting things done. You might have kind of meetings within the team, but you don't typically have a schedule that's full of meetings with whoever. If there's something that needs to be met about, you have a meeting about it. If you need to have a sync meeting, you have a sync meeting. Maybe you'll have a stand-up, but it's all with the team. The team is all on the same page. And most importantly, it's not interrupting your flow state. So, if you have a stand-up, it might be right at the beginning of the day, or it might be around lunchtime. But it's a place, it's the one place during the day when everybody gets interrupted, but it's to synchronize, so it's well worth it. Whereas if we're dealing with a normal week's worth of meetings, you might get interrupted, every couple hours, and it's really hard to get into a constant, a continuous flow state in that situation. Next up, hackathons tend to have a clear vision because you're organized around a single idea. The team is kind of self-organized around an idea. You have that idea, you have a clear vision, and if you don't have a clear vision, you don't get a team rallied around it. It's as simple as that. If you do have a clear vision, everybody's on board, everybody understands the vision, everybody can work toward the vision even if you haven't explained all the nitty-gritty details to them. And furthermore, because you're only dealing with a short amount of time, it's really easy to convey a vision for 4 days. Conveying a vision for 4 weeks for months, for years, that's a little bit more tricky. But if you're talking about just 4 days or a week, you can pretty easily convey a vision that at the end of this week, this is what we're going to show. Short and simple, clear vision. Everybody gets excited about it, and then everybody starts hacking on it. Next is that it's not really just that week. We keep talking about a hackathon being a few days or a week, but typically there's actually some amount of time that probably multiple people on the team have thought about the idea prior to working on the hackathon. See, the one of the upsides of not being able to work on something until that specific week is that you're kind of forced to think about it. Just because you're not actively writing code on it doesn't mean you're not thinking about it. You're probably thinking about it, especially if you're super excited about it. You are thinking about it. You're thinking about how you might implement the database. What sort of database might be appropriate? What sort of data model you're going to use? How people are going to get into your system, or how people are going to start creating objects in your system. You're thinking through all these things and not able to write code, which means you're just thinking about things. You're just thinking through them. You're kind of poking holes in your own ideas and continuing to think about them, so that by the time you actually sit down for hackathon week, you might have the entire system thought out in your head, and all that remains is to write the code, which means you are spending most of your time in that flow state just writing the code, and not kind of extending the amount of time that it takes to do all that stuff because you've already thought about it. Next, you're self-organized. I've already mentioned this a couple times, that hackathons tend to have self-organizing teams. If you are truly self-organized, where the people working on the project are people who have decided that they want to work on this project, you have a bunch of people who are excited. And they're kind of at the peak of their excitement when you start working on it, and they haven't been working on the project long enough to kind of just lose that momentum. So, a week is a really short amount of time. It's really easy to keep that momentum going for a week, especially if you're excited about the project, if you're passionate about the project, and you're driving toward having a compelling demo at the end of the week. So it kind of gets everybody rallied around, rallied around that vision. Even if everybody doesn't all agree on the requirements, because they're all driving toward having a demo at the end of the week, everybody's willing to potentially compromise or try an experiment to get to a working product, because that's the goal at the end of the week. It's not the goal at the end of the week is not to have something perfect that fits exactly one person's ideal image of what it's going to be. The goal is to have a demo at the end that you can then get feedback on, which realistically, isn't that what Agile software is supposed to be about? We're supposed to be building software that is, MVP or something like that, that we can get in front of customers, get feedback on, and iterate, right? Next is that demo at the end of the week. Customer-oriented demos. You're typically not going to be demoing the code that you wrote. You are driving toward a working, functional software demo that a customer might actually use. In all of the cases when I've done hackathons, we've actually been demoing to either actual customers, actual users, or people who are representatives of our customers, potentially, internal stakeholders, internal customers, that sort of thing. And I think that really changes how we think about software. It's not about implementing the individual pieces that we need in order to build software, implementing the individual Legos that go into building a piece of software. It's about building the final product. Does it look like something people want to use? Does it look like something that solves the problem that customers are looking to solve? And then finally, I kind of mentioned this already, but bias for action. This is actually one of Amazon's leadership principles. But that's kind of the side the other side of not having enough time to spend too much time spinning. There is a bias for action. So if there is something that gets in the way, an obstacle, there's a bias for breaking that down. Someone will step in and find a way to break down the obstacle, work around the obstacle, solve the obstacle, whatever needs to happen in the amount of time. Or you might just avoid that because you know it's going to take more than the amount of time that you have available. And also, supportive tasks get eliminated. So you might, I mean, hopefully you don't, but you might cut corners on like CI/CD or something like that, which really, I think, highlights an issue with what you're dealing with potentially with your process. If you feel like in the spirit of a hackathon, you have to cut corners with your process, there are parts of your process that you value, but you feel like you have to cut those corners in order to achieve the goals of the hackathon. Maybe those are areas for improvement so that those aren't obstacles. If they're obstacles during the hackathon, they're obstacles when you're not in a hackathon as well. So that's something to watch out for. Sometimes if you're in a hackathon and you do want to have, let's say, a CI/CD pipeline or a unit test or something like that, because you're in a time crunch, you will find ways to get that value with the limited amount of time you have available to you. So that's my list. Now, I will say that this doesn't mean that we should treat every week or every sprint as a hackathon. That would be very stressful. You might even use the word toxic. I do have a separate video that I'll be posting probably in a week. Whole list of basically mirroring my list of why are hackathons so successful, but how can we learn from hackathons and bring some of that energy back to the office or back to our normal process? How can we adapt our normal agile processes so that they are as efficient as hackathons, still maintain that energy? And what are we doing wrong when it comes to agile, safe, all of those things? Because I do think all of those processes, they have tried to get super scientific about the replicating the process and every sprint looking exactly the same, and here's what it should look like, very prescriptive, and I think they've missed the mark. So stay tuned for that video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. Hit that thumbs up button if you liked what I talked about today. If you've done a hackathon and have similar experiences, different experiences, just thoughts, questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I love answering comments, questions, that sort of thing. And if you want to hear more like this, go ahead and let me know. If this was valuable content, I'd love to hear from you. But until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.